to all of the card players out there. We all know what the Joker card is. In some games, it is a trump card, it's a twist. In some games, it's the most powerful card you can play. In some games, it's not even brought out the deck. So as I speak about a Joker, I'm talking about the Joker, the wild card for the Baltimore Ravens. And as it pertains to this offseason, as it pertains to this legal tampering period coming up really, really shortly, because as of tonight, we are going to lose an hour's time. So that's an hour less that the Ravens have to get any deals done that they're going to get done before the Monday legal tampering period. And when I talk about that wild card, when I talk about that Joker to me is going to be Odafe Oweh. And we all know that Ronnie Stanley, as it stands right now, is the most important piece. He's the most important card in the deck when it comes to this offseason. But the wild card, the one that a lot of people aren't really speaking about, is the Odafe Oweh card. And if you don't know what I mean, let me explain it to you. Now, Odafe Oweh, who throughout his 4-year career has 23 sacks, 10 of which he got last season, which was his breakout season, which technically was a contract season, but the Ravens picked up his 5th-year option before the start of 2024. So they knew that they were going to get an extra year out of Oweh to reevaluate him to see if he had what they thought long-term would be the best productivity for this team, or was he just another flash in the pan and technically a contract year and just had a breakout season. But Oweh did play better than most people expecting, hitting the double-digit mark in sacks for the first time in his career. He had 2 games where he had 2.5 sacks and looked unblockable. I thought one of those games he had 3.5, but they kind of took one away. So he made it look like a very smart move for the Ravens, picking up his 5th-year option and getting him on a discount. But the only problem here is with his $13 million cap hit, it kind of hurts the Ravens a little bit because they only have $12 million under the salary cap to play with. And the Ravens have a lot of needs across the board on offense and defense, and maybe even special teams. All right, let's take a minute. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you like what I'm doing, if you like the content that I'm bringing out, if I'm bringing some value to your life and just giving you something to do or just something to listen to while you're out and about. Please hit that like button. We just hit 6,000 subscribers, and I do appreciate each and every one of you for helping me get there. But now we are on the road to 10K. Yes, 6,000 is wonderful. I'm glad it's about 5,950 more than I ever thought that I was going to get. But hey, now that we're here, let's bust that door down and get this 10K rolling. I appreciate y'all. So the thought process was that this franchise tag was going to be a placeholder, and the Ravens were possibly going to get a long-term deal done with Odafe Oweh. But of course, with the Ravens and EDC being as quiet as they normally are during the beginning of the offseason, all of these other teams are making moves to get better. All of these teams are re-signing players or signing players to lucrative contracts, which is going to make it a lot harder for the Ravens to kind of budget billing their free agents. And in principle, under what most people get during free agency period and re-signing their players, Odafe Oweh, to me personally, would have been slotted in maybe that $13 to $15 million a year slot. But if they signed him to a long-term deal, they could lessen the money that he gets and kind of finagle it in a way to give them a little bit of more cap room this offseason. But the problem is, what does Odafe Oweh think that he's worth? Does he think that he's worth what a lot of these elite pass rushers are getting? Because in his defense, he can tell the Ravens, I've technically gotten better year in and year out, and in some cases with less snaps. So he's going to be thinking that he's going to get more money than the Ravens are possibly offering. And another thing that conflates this is the Buffalo Bills, who have been busy early in this offseason, who themselves have re-signed Greg Rousseau to an $80 million extension. And with that $80 million extension, he has $54 million in guarantees. Now, he has been a lot more productive, a lot more consistent than Odafe Oweh, but sometimes these players, they set the market. Now, I may not be as good as the next guy, but in comparison to him, he may have gotten 80. I may deserve 75. And just like with the Saquon Barkley thing and how it's going to inflate the numbers on Derrick Henry, the same can be had for Odafe Oweh. We still don't know what the peace sign meant. We don't know what's going through Odafe Oweh's head. We don't know what's going on with the Ravens organization. But as far as this being a trump card, what happens is, could there be a ripple effect? Can Odafe Oweh cause some smoke and say, listen, if you're not going to extend me and sign me to a long-term deal, because I don't want to play on this 1-year option. I want a long-term deal. I don't want to be lame duck. Give me my money. But right now, the Ravens don't have that money to give. technically, and we don't know how far apart the two sides are. So now what happens is if they're not happy with Odafe and they want to trade him possibly and recoup some draft picks and save some of that money, what are they going to do about the pass rush? Because they were already in need of a pass rusher or two this offseason. So now if we take away Odafe Oweh, where do we go from here? Now, I know that Harold Landry was just released, and a lot of people and a lot of publications said that the Ravens should be one of the top teams to sign him in free agency because it's not going to cost the team a comp pick because he was released. But to me, I'm not sure. Yes, he's had 18 sacks over the past 2 seasons, but looking at him, his pass rush win rate on its own is not very impressive. And if we're going off of what the Philadelphia Eagles did in the Super Bowl, we're not looking for scheme guys. We're looking for guys that can win their one-on-one matchups and cause pressure and get sacks by themselves, which is going to allow us to drop back and scheme some things behind them to shore up this 27th ranked pass defense. Then you throw Joey Bosa in the mix, who was also released, but he's too injured for me personally. He just can't seem to stay healthy, but he is a talent. Then for me, I think the most viable option for the Ravens should be Khalil Mack. I think Khalil Mack wants to get a ring. I think he believes that there are a handful of teams that can help him win that ring because he's already made the money. He's already had the accolades. And I still think that he has a lot of juice left in him. And with the pieces that the Ravens have on defense, I think that he would be a perfect fit. But then you also have to factor in, what would the Ravens get for Odafe Oweh? Would they get a second? Would they get a third? Could they swap him for a certain player? Who knows? And this is where the wild card comes in. We don't know what piece of the puzzle that Oweh plays in this as far as the Ravens offseason goes. Is he in the team's future plans? Because we know a lot of times when we get players that price themselves out of Baltimore, they just move on and go back into the draft or go on free agency and go elsewhere for cheaper options. But even though I said that this is a wild card scenario, a Joker type situation, let's not be fooled. Ronnie Stanley is the beginning and the end of the Ravens offseason. If we don't re-sign him, it's going to have ripple effects across all of this offseason. It's going to change the movement and the players that we need to draft. It's going to maybe switch personnel around on the team. So even though Ronnie Stanley is the priority to me in this offseason, we need to figure out what is going to be done with Odafe Oweh. And speaking of Ronnie Stanley, listen, I know I've been saying the New England Patriots have been very aggressive at trying to get Ronnie Stanley, but I thought about something today. The Kansas City Chiefs, they could really and honestly be making a move because I'm having feelings of deja vu. Like I'm feeling like I've been here before. I'm feeling like it's 2020 and the Kansas City Chiefs just lost the Super Bowl. And they lost the Super Bowl because their offensive line was horrible. Terrible, horrible, terrible. So what did Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs do that very next offseason? They turned towards the Baltimore Ravens and got them a left tackle in Orlando Brown Jr. Fast forward to 2024. They just got beat up in the Super Bowl because their offensive line was putrid. And where could they be looking for that next left tackle? Ronnie Stanley and the Baltimore Ravens. So we have just a little bit of time left for the Ravens to negotiate a deal and bring Ronnie Stanley back onto this team. We need to do something because it's going to affect everything that goes forward. I know we don't have a lot of money to play with. I know we have a lot of holes to fill, but something needs to be done. And we know EDC does not decide to get out of bed until about the 3rd or 4th day, maybe even the 2nd week of free agency. We're not very active as a team. I would have thought that money-wise, they would have moved some things around to give them that cap flexibility to make a signing just in case, because we don't know who's going to get traded. We don't know who's going to be released because they signed someone else. And just to have that money readily available right then and there to pounce, I just personally would think that that would be one of the best moves. But apparently EDC is like, we're going to stick with what we got and roll with the punches. As usual, we are going to let those major free agents go where they may and pick over the scraps. It's like if you live in Baltimore and you are a crab eater. Because I remember back when I used to eat the crabs, you have some people that as soon as the crabs come out, they go for it. They ripping, they dipping, sipping, whatever. And you have those ones that just sit back and wait and just pick over and get the crab legs. They don't like breaking open the crabs and dealing with the mustard and all that other stuff. They just like getting the crab legs and breaking them open and getting easy access. And I think that's what EDC and the Baltimore Ravens do. They wait for everything to get taken up and then they pick over the leftovers. Yes, crab leg meat is delicious, but it is not as fulfilling as eating the whole crab. And I think this offseason is where we need to go, and we need to dig in and open up and get all the meat, pause, that we possibly can. So after re-signing Ronnie Stanley, the next step is to lay down that Joker card and figure out what we're going to do with Odafe Oweh.